Imagine you're out in the wild. The campfire's crackling, the stars are twinkling, and the night feels calm. But what if that calm is a lie? What if something's out there, watching you, waiting for the perfect moment? These stories will make you think twice about ever camping again. They're not ghost stories or made-up tales. These are real, bone-chilling experiences from people who went into the wilderness and came back with nightmares, or didn't come back at all. Welcome to 5 true camping horror stories that will make you stay indoors. Grab a snack, turn on every light, and let's dive into the terror. Story 1. The Whispering Valley. Deep in the Appalachian Mountains, there's a spot called Black Hollow, but locals know it as the Whispering Valley. It's not the breeze that gives it that name. It's the creepy voices that seem to know your name, whispering in the dark. In the summer of 2017, 4 friends, Jake, Sarah, Mia, and Ethan, planned a fun weekend camping there. They'd heard the spooky rumors. Hikers vanishing, strange lights flashing in the trees, voices that followed people home. Jake, the group's leader, laughed it off, saying it was just small-town gossip. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The group drove up on a sunny Friday, their car packed with tents, snacks, and excitement. They hiked through thick green trails, the air smelling of pine and earth. Sarah, who loved photography, took tons of pictures: tall trees with twisty branches, the sparkling creek they camped by, and her friends goofing off. Ethan, the group's comedian, kept teasing Mia about being afraid of the dark, making her roll her eyes. Jake, always the planner, studied his map, pointing out cool spots for their next day's hike. They set up their tents in a circle by the creek, cooked hot dogs over a fire, and told silly stories under a sky bursting with stars. It was perfect, until 2:37 a.m. Sarah woke up, her heart pounding like a drum. A voice, deep, creepy, and way too close, whispered her name. Sarah. Sarah. It wasn't the wind rustling the leaves or an animal scurrying nearby. It sounded personal, like someone was right outside her tent, knowing exactly who she was. She sat up, her sleeping bag pulled tight, and listened. The voice came again, slow and eerie, making her skin crawl. She unzipped her tent just a crack, peeking out, but saw nothing but darkness and the faint glow of their dying campfire. She crawled to the others' tents, shaking them awake. "Guys, did you hear that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Mia's eyes went wide with fear, but Ethan and Jake were groggy, saying they didn't hear anything. They told her it was probably a bad dream and to go back to sleep. Sarah started to doubt herself, wondering if she'd imagined it. But then Ethan froze, his face paling. He heard it. Footsteps, heavy and slow, crunching through the leaves around their camp. Not fast, not random, but steady. Like someone, or something, was walking in a circle around them. The group huddled in Jake's tent, shining their flashlights into the night. The beams caught only trees and shadows, but the shadows seemed wrong, moving when they shouldn't. The footsteps kept going, round and round, never getting closer or farther, just circling for hours. Mia hugged her knees, whispering, "What? Does it want? Why is it doing this?" Ethan, usually the joker, was quiet, his eyes darting to the tent's walls. Sarah's hands shook as she held her flashlight, the beam wobbling. Jake tried to stay calm, saying, "It's probably just an animal. We're okay." But his voice cracked, and nobody believed him. Then the whispers came back, and this time, it wasn't just Sarah's name. Jake, Sarah, Mia, Ethan. The voices said all their names over and over, like a creepy song that wouldn't stop. They didn't sound like people. Too many voices mixed together, some deep, some high, coming from the trees, the ground, even the air around them. Mia started crying, her sobs quiet but desperate. "It knows us," she said. "It knows us." Sarah pulled a pocket knife from her bag, gripping it so tight her knuckles turned white. Ethan whispered, "What if it's not human?" Jake didn't answer, just stared at the tent's door, like he expected it to open any second. The footsteps and whispers went on until the sky started to lighten. When the sun rose, everything stopped. The quiet was worse, thick, heavy, like the valley was waiting for them to make a move. They packed up fast, shoving their stuff into backpacks, desperate to leave. But when they checked their GPS, it was dead, the screen blank. Their phones had no signal, not even a single bar. Jake's compass, which he swore by, was spinning, like a top, pointing nowhere. It was like the valley was trapping them. As they took down their tents, Ethan noticed something that made his stomach drop. Footprints. Big, barefoot prints, almost human but too long and too deep, circled their camp in the soft dirt. They hadn't been there the night before. The tracks led into the forest, but there were no prints coming to the camp, like whatever made them appeared out of nowhere. Mia backed away, shaking her head. "We need to go. Now," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Jake, trying to keep everyone together, said they should follow the creek back to their car. It was their best shot. They walked fast, their eyes scanning the trees, where shadows seemed to flicker just out of sight. The creek should have led them straight out, but hours passed, and it kept twisting, looping back on itself. Places they passed, a tree with a weird branch, a big rock covered in moss, showed up again, but different. The tree's branch was straight now. The rock was gone. Mia's voice shook as she said, "This isn't right. We're not getting anywhere." Sarah held her knife tighter, her hands sweaty. Ethan kept looking behind them, like he expected something to jump out. Around noon, Mia screamed, pointing to a clearing ahead. Their tents, the ones they'd packed up hours ago, were set up again, exactly like before, with the flaps swaying in the breeze. The group stopped, their hearts racing. Ethan whispered, "This isn't possible. We took those down." Sarah stepped closer, her flashlight shaking, and looked inside one tent. It was empty, but the air was freezing, like a winter day, even though it was summer. Jake grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "We're leaving. Right now," he said, his voice sharp. They ran, the forest feeling like it was closing in. The whispers started again, louder, angrier, shouting their names in a way that made their heads hurt. "Stay!" the voices hissed. "Stay with us!" Branches scratched their faces, roots tripped them, and the air got so thick it was hard to breathe. Mia fell, crying, and Ethan helped her up, his own face white with fear. The creek was gone. The path was a mess, and the valley felt alive, like it was toying with them, laughing at their fear. They ran for what felt like hours, their legs burning, their lungs aching. Then suddenly, the whispers stopped. The fog lifted. The creek appeared again, sparkling in the sunlight, leading right to their car. They piled in, Jake slamming the gas pedal, the tires kicking up dirt. Nobody spoke until they reached a small town where they stumbled into a diner, their clothes dirty, their faces pale. The locals weren't surprised. An old man at the counter, his hands rough from years in the mountains, looked at them and said, "You're lucky. Most don't get out of the Whispering Valley." He told them about others who'd been there, hikers who heard the voices, saw the lights, felt the footsteps. Some made it out, shaken and changed. Others were names on missing posters, their pictures fading in the sheriff's office. One story stuck with Sarah, a hiker who escaped the valley but went back, saying the voices called him. He was never seen again. The group sat in silence, sipping coffee they couldn't taste, the old man's words sinking in. None of them camp anymore. Sarah, now living in a noisy city, still hears her name whispered at night. Faint but clear, even through her apartment walls. She keeps her curtains closed, afraid to look outside. Ethan moved to a big city, far from any trees, but he checks his locks every night, sometimes twice. Mia doesn't talk about the trip, her eyes far away when anyone asks. She threw away her camping gear and avoids anything green. Jake lasted a year before he vanished, last seen hiking back into the Appalachians, a map of Black Hollow in his backpack. Some say he wanted to understand what happened. Others say the valley wanted him back, and this time, it didn't let him go. Story 2. The Thing in the Lake Crescent in Washington's Olympic National Park is a stunning place. Clear water, tall pine trees, and mountains all around. But something lives in that lake, something old and scary. In 2019, Daniel, a 35-year-old guy who loved the outdoors, went there for a week of camping. He'd faced all kinds of dangers: bears, snowstorms, even a wolf that got too close. But Lake Crescent felt different. The air was too still, the birds didn't sing, and at night, the water glowed with a weird light that wasn't from the stars. Daniel arrived on a cool June morning, rowing his canoe across the calm lake to a quiet spot on the north shore. He'd been looking forward to this for months. A break from his busy job, a chance to be alone with nature. He set up his tent, built a small fire, and cooked some fish he'd brought, the smell mixing with the fresh pine air. The first night was okay, but he couldn't help noticing the lake's glow, a faint greenish light that seemed to move under the water, like something was down there. He told himself it was just plants or reflections, but he slept with his knife close, just in case. On the second night, he woke up to a loud splash, like something huge jumped into the lake. He grabbed his flashlight and looked out, thinking it might be a deer or a bear. But all he saw were ripples, big circles spreading from the middle of the lake, like something heavy had gone under. Then, a shape came up, a dark, shiny thing, way too big to be a fish and too smooth to be a log. It stayed there for a moment, its outline blurry, then sank back down, leaving the water still. Daniel's heart was racing. He tried to convince himself it was his imagination, but he stayed up all night, feeding the fire and keeping his eyes on the lake. The next morning, he felt tired, but tried to act normal. He ate breakfast, checked his gear, and decided to fish, hoping it would calm him down. He cast his line into the water, watching the ripples spread. His first cast came back, empty, no hook, no line, just gone, like something took it. He frowned, thinking it snagged on a rock, and tried again. This time, something yanked the rod so hard it nearly flew out of his hands. He pulled back, thinking he'd hooked a huge fish, his heart pumping with excitement. But then it stopped, the line going loose. When he reeled it in, his lure was covered in a slimy black goo that smelled like rotting meat. He gagged, dropping it, and tossed it into the fire, where it hissed and popped like it was alive. That day, Daniel couldn't shake the fear. He walked around his camp, checking the trees, the shore, anything to feel safe. The lake looked normal, in the sunlight, but he kept seeing that shape in his mind. Those ripples, that smell. He thought about leaving, but he'd planned this trip for so long, and he didn't want to give up. By evening, he built a bigger fire, sitting close with his knife in one hand and his flashlight in the other. He told himself he was being silly, that he'd faced worse. But deep down, he knew something was wrong. Around midnight, the splash came again, louder, closer, shaking the ground. The lake started moving, ripples racing toward the shore like waves. In the moonlight, he saw it, a long, snake-like shape sliding under the water, moving slow and creepy. Two bright spots, like glowing eyes, stared right at him, not blinking, not moving. Daniel stumbled back, tripping over rocks, his flashlight beam shaking. The thing didn't come out, but it got closer, the water bubbling like it was about to leap onto the shore. He could feel it watching him, like it knew he was there, like it was hungry. He didn't wait. He ran to his tent, grabbed his backpack, and sprinted to his car, a mile away through the woods. But as he ran, he heard something that made his blood freeze. Wet, heavy footsteps behind him, splashing through the mud. It wasn't just in the lake anymore. It was on land, following him. The air got thick, the forest dead quiet, except for those steps, slow and steady, matching his pace. The smell of rot hit him, so strong he could barely breathe. He didn't look back, but he felt it. Something huge, something close, like it was reaching for him. Branches snapped, leaves crunched, and the ground seemed to shake with every step it took. He reached his car, his hands shaking so bad he dropped his keys twice. He finally got the door open, jumped in, and slammed the gas, the tires spinning in the dirt. The headlights lit up the trees, but he didn't see anything behind him. The footsteps stopped, but the feeling didn't, like it was still there, just out of sight. He drove straight to the ranger station, banging on the door until someone answered. He told them everything, expecting them to laugh or say he was crazy. But the rangers' faces were serious, their eyes dark. They sat him down, gave him water, and told him about the lake. Native tribes had stories of a creature in Lake Crescent, something older than the mountains, something that fed on people, who stayed too long. The rangers had seen weird things too. Campers gone missing, strange marks on the shore, boats found empty, drifting in the lake's center with no one aboard. One ranger, an older guy with scars on his hands, leaned in and said, "You're lucky it didn't follow you farther. Most don't get away." Daniel asked what it was, but the ranger just shook his head. "Some things you don't name." Daniel didn't go home right away. He stayed in a motel, too scared to be alone. He sold all his camping gear, moved to a city far from any water, and swore he'd never go near a lake again. But he can't escape it. In his dreams, he sees those glowing eyes, feels the cold water touching his feet. Sometimes, late at night, he hears a splash or a wet step outside. His house, like it's checking on him. He locks his doors, pulls the curtains, but the smell of rot lingers, and he knows it's still out there, waiting for him to come back. Story 3, The Man Who Wasn't. Their Redstone Canyon in Nevada is a wide, empty desert with red rocks that glow under the stars. It's a camper's dream, quiet, beautiful, and far from everything. But something hunts there, something that doesn't belong. In 2021, Emily and Ryan, a young couple from Los Angeles, went there for a romantic trip. They wanted to escape the city, have some fun, and be alone together. They didn't know they'd never feel alone again. They arrived as the sun was setting, the sky turning orange and pink. They hiked through the canyon, their backpacks bouncing, laughing about how different it was from their busy lives. The desert was stunning. Huge cliffs, a sky full of stars, and a silence so deep it felt like a hug. They found a perfect spot, set up their tent, and cooked dinner on a little stove, cuddling under a blanket as the night got cold. They fell asleep holding each other, the desert feeling like their own private world. But that first night, they woke up to something weird, laughter, high and fast, echoing off the canyon walls. It sounded like a person, but wrong, like someone was playing a prank and got it all messed up. Ryan, who always had an explanation, sat up and listened. "It's probably another camper, maybe having a party," he said, trying to sound sure. Emily wasn't buying it. The canyon was too empty. They hadn't seen a single person all day, not even a footprint. The laughter stopped, and they tried to go back to sleep, but Emily couldn't relax. She kept her flashlight close, her eyes on the tent's walls, waiting for something to happen. Around 3 a.m., she nudged Ryan awake, her voice barely a whisper. "There's someone outside." A shadow moved past their tent, tall, skinny, moving in a jerky way, like a puppet with loose strings. It stopped right by the tent's door, and they heard it, loud, wet breathing, like it was sick or hurt, right next to them. Emily's heart was pounding, her nails digging into Ryan's arm. He wanted to yell, to scare it off, but something deep inside told him to stay quiet. They sat there, frozen, listening to that breathing, feeling it through the thin tent fabric. It didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there for an hour until the sky started to get light. Then it was gone. No sound, no steps, just gone, like it was never there. When the sun came up, they crawled out, their eyes red from no sleep. They looked around, expecting to find something. Tracks, a campsite, anything. But the sand around their tent was smooth, untouched, like nobody had been there. They tried to laugh, saying they were just tired, that the desert played tricks on your mind. But their smiles were fake and they both knew it. They spent the day hiking, trying to enjoy the trip, but Emily kept looking over her shoulder, and Ryan's jokes felt forced. That night, the laughter came back, louder, closer, circling their tent like it was taunting them. The shadow showed, up again, even taller, its arms and legs bent in ways that made their stomachs turn. It didn't just stand. It moved, like it was dancing, its shadow twisting and jumping in the starlight, like it was laughing at their fear. Emily cried, holding Ryan so tight it hurt. Ryan's flashlight kept flickering, its beam showing nothing but empty desert. They whispered to each other, trying to stay calm, but the shadow kept dancing, its breathing louder, like it was excited. They didn't sleep, sitting up with their backs pressed together, waiting for morning. When the sun rose, they packed up fast, not even eating breakfast, and drove to a tiny town with a gas station and a diner. They told their story to the cashier, expecting her to roll her eyes. But she didn't. An old lady at the counter, her eyes sharp, said, "You saw the man who wasn't there." She told them about a figure that shows up to campers, always at night, always alone. It doesn't hurt you, not with claws or teeth, but it gets inside your head. Some people, too curious or too scared, tried to follow it, to figure out what it was. They never came back. The gas station had a bulletin board with missing posters, their pictures old and curling, their smiles haunting. Emily and Ryan don't camp anymore. They moved to a tall apartment building, far from the desert's open skies. But Emily dreams of the shadow, its creepy dance, its laughter echoing in her mind. She wakes up sweating, her heart racing, checking the windows. Sometimes, when the apartment is quiet, she hears that wet breathing just outside, waiting for her to look. Ryan says he doesn't hear it, but he sleeps with a light on now, something he never did before. The desert changed them, and they know it's still out, there, dancing under the stars. Story 4. The Lost Trail Tillamook State Forest in Oregon is a magical place. Huge trees, foggy trails, and streams that sparkle in the sun. But it hides something dark, something that doesn't let go. In 2020, Mark and Lisa took their 3 kids, Ava, Ben, and Chloe, for a family camping trip. They were pros at this, with maps, snacks, and a plan to stick to a safe trail. But the forest had other plans, and it wasn't letting them leave easy. They got there on a bright Saturday, the kids bouncing with excitement. They hiked through giant fir trees, the air smelling like rain and pine. Ava, the youngest at 7, ran ahead, her pigtails swinging, laughing at every squirrel. Ben, 10, collected shiny rocks, stuffing them in his pockets. Chloe, 15, was glued to her phone, texting friends until the signal dropped, making her groan. Mark led the way, his map in hand, while Lisa carried the snacks, keeping everyone happy. The trail was clear, the day perfect, and they felt like they were in a movie. But as the afternoon went on, the trail got weird. It got narrower, twisting, around like a maze, and seemed to loop back to where they started. Mark checked his map, but the landmarks didn't match. A stream they crossed was gone. A hill was steeper than it should be. Lisa felt a knot in her stomach, but smiled for the kids, saying, "It's fine, just a little adventure." The kids didn't notice, but Chloe put her phone away, looking around like she felt it too. Then Ava stopped, her face pale, pointing into the trees. "There's a person," she said, her voice tiny. Far off, something stood, shaped like a person but blurry, like it was fading in and out. Its head was tilted at a creepy angle, not moving, just staring. Lisa forced a laugh, saying, "It's just another hiker, sweetie," but her hands were shaking. Mark shouted, "Hello? You okay?" His voice echoed, but nothing answered. The figure didn't move. Then, in a blink, it was gone, leaving the trees swaying like it passed through them. The family walked faster, the kids clinging to Lisa, the forest feeling heavier, like it was watching. The trail got worse. Branches blocked their path, roots tripped them, and the air turned cold, like winter snuck in. Ben screamed, pointing at the ground, a kid's shoe, old and dirty, half buried in the dirt. It wasn't theirs, and it looked like it had been there for years, the laces rotted. Lisa hugged Ben, saying, "It's okay, buddy, just an old shoe," but her voice was tight. Mark's face was pale, his map crumpled in his hand. The trail was gone, replaced by a mess of trees and fog that seemed to swallow the light. They set up camp, too tired to keep going, their tents looking small against the huge trees. Lisa made hot chocolate, trying to keep the kids calm, but everyone was quiet. At night, the forest came alive. Whispers, soft at first, then louder, came from all around, like a crowd talking in a strange language. Chloe, sitting by the fire, said she saw faces in the trees, pale with no eyes, disappearing when she looked straight at them. Ava clung to Lisa, crying, "They're watching us, Mommy." Mark built the fire bigger, but it didn't help. The whispers grew, filling their heads, making it hard to think. At 3 a.m., the whispers stopped, and the silence was worse, like the world was holding its breath. Then the ground shook, like something huge was walking, circling their camp. The trees creaked, the air got heavy, and Lisa whispered, "Don't make a sound," holding the kids so tight they could barely breathe. The footsteps were slow, heavy, shaking the dirt under their tents. Ava whimpered, and Lisa covered her mouth, her own heart pounding. It went on for hours, circling, never stopping, like it was waiting for them to come out. When the sun came, up they ran, leaving their tents, their food, everything. The trail, which had been a nightmare the day before, now led straight to their car, like it was letting them go. They drove to the ranger station, their faces pale, their clothes dirty. The rangers listened, their eyes serious, not laughing. They knew about lost trails in Tillamook, paths that didn't exist on maps, leading people deep into the forest. Some got out, scared and shaken. Others vanished, their names on signs by the trails. The shoe Ben found? Rangers had seen. Others scattered in the woods, with no owner, like the forest was collecting them. The family doesn't camp anymore. Ava, now older, draws pictures of the blurry figure, its head tilted wrong, its body fading. She shows them to Lisa, who hides them, not wanting to remember. Ben keeps the shoe in a box under his bed, too scared to throw it away, like it's a piece of the forest he can't let go. Chloe stays away from trees, always checking her phone's signal, her eyes darting to shadows. Lisa hears the whispers in her dreams, calling her back to the forest, her heart racing when she wakes. Mark tries to forget, but the forest's heavy feeling stays, like a weight on his chest, never letting him rest. Story 5. The Campfire That Never Died. The Adirondack Mountains in New York are wild and beautiful, with big hills and old trees that feel like they've seen everything. But something lingers there, something that doesn't let go. In 2018, 4 college friends, Liam, Sophie, Noah, and Emma, went camping to celebrate graduating. They wanted a fun weekend, a last big adventure before adult life. Instead, they found something that changed them forever. They arrived in a clearing by a river, their car packed with gear and excitement. The first day was perfect. Hiking through green trails, swimming in the cold river, and building a huge campfire that lit up the night. Sophie, who loved drawing, sketched the fire, its flames dancing on her sketch pad. Noah, who never believed in spooky stuff, told funny stories, making everyone laugh. Emma, the group's planner, made sure their tents were perfect, their food organized. Liam, the quiet one, felt a weird vibe but didn't say anything, not wanting to ruin the fun. As it got dark, the fire got brighter, even when they didn't add more wood. Sophie laughed, saying it was magic, her eyes sparkling. But Liam saw something in the flames. Shapes, not logs, but people, moving and twisting like they were trapped. He blinked, and they were gone. But his stomach twisted. He didn't tell anyone, afraid they'd think he was losing it. That night, he couldn't sleep. The fire was still burning, hours after they stopped feeding it, its light pulsing like a heartbeat. Then he heard it, chanting, soft and far away, coming from the woods. It wasn't any language he knew, but it was steady, like a creepy song, making his skin crawl. He sat up, looking into the dark, but only saw the fire's glow, making the trees look closer, like they were leaning in. He thought about waking the others, but didn't, not wanting to scare them over nothing. The chanting faded, and he lay back down, his heart still racing. The next morning, they found something weird. Their food, which they'd stored in a cooler, wasn't eaten by animals. It was arranged in a perfect circle around the fire, cans and bags placed carefully, like someone set it up. Noah laughed, saying it was a prank, but his voice was shaky. Emma found something else, a mark carved into a tree, a spiral with sharp lines, like a broken sun. It was fresh, the wood still wet, like it was carved that night. Sophie drew the mark in her sketch pad, her hands trembling. Liam felt the air get heavy, like the forest was watching them, waiting. They tried to act normal, hiking and swimming, but everyone was on edge. Sophie kept looking at her sketch. Noah's jokes fell flat, and Emma checked their gear over and over, like she was afraid it would disappear. Liam stayed quiet, the chanting echoing in his head, making him jump at every sound. That night, the chanting came back, louder, closer, matching the fire's pulsing light. Sophie screamed, pointing at the flames, where the shapes were back, clearer now, like people, their arms and legs bending in creepy ways, reaching out like they wanted to grab her. The group backed away, the chanting so loud it hurt their ears, the fire growing so hot it burned their faces. They yelled at each other, scared and confused, their voices barely heard over the noise. Liam grabbed a bucket of water to put out the fire, but it didn't work. The flames kept burning, brighter, like they were alive. They tried to leave, running to their car, but it wouldn't start. The battery, which was fine the day before, was dead, the engine silent. They decided to walk to the nearest road, grabbing their flashlights and backpacks. But the trail seemed to stretch forever, the forest closing in, the trees looking wrong, like they were moving when nobody looked. The chanting followed, stuck in their heads, never stopping, like it was part of them now. They walked for hours, their legs aching, their throats dry, the forest laughing at them. At sunrise, they finally saw the ranger station, its lights a beacon in the fog. They stumbled in, tired and scared, their clothes torn from branches. The rangers listened, their faces pale, not joking. They knew the stories, old ceremonies in the Adirondacks done by people long gone, or so everyone thought. The mark on Yid, the tree was a sign of something ancient, something that lived on fear and fire. Campers went missing, camps were found empty, fires burned with no wood. The rangers had seen it all. One ranger, his voice low, said, "You're lucky you got out when you did, most don't." The friends never went back. They don't talk about that trip, not even to each other. Sophie burned her sketch pad, but she still sees the mark in her dreams, glowing in the dark. Noah hates fires, the smell of smoke making him sick, his hands shaking when he sees a match. Emma checks her car battery every day, her plans stricter than ever, like she's afraid of losing control. Liam dreams of the fire, its shapes calling his name, their voices mixing with the chanting. Sometimes, when he's alone, he smells smoke and hears the song, just outside the trees, waiting for him to answer. These 5 stories prove the wild isn't always your friend. The woods, the lakes, the deserts, they hide things, shadows, stuff that doesn't belong. So next time you're thinking about a camping trip, ask yourself, are you really alone out there? If these stories freaked you out, tell your friends, and let us know which one's going to keep you up tonight. Got a scary camping story of your own? We want to hear it. Want more true spooky tales? Subscribe, because we've got a lot more to scare you with. Until next time, sleep tight, and maybe stay indoors.